Hey developers, welcome back. Are you ready to level up your Laravel skills? Today I'm here with an amazing playlist in which we will be diving into something fresh, modern and highly scalable. We will be implementing server-side data tables in Laravel 11 using Vite and Yajra. I'm Umesh Rana and you are watching Programming Fields. If you have been following along, you know that our Laravel data table playlist has already covered everything like client-side and server-side rendering, adding and editing columns, performing actions like edit, update, and delete. Also, we implemented the row and column reorderable. Furthermore, we extended this to column-specific search, where we can search with any columns. And also we implemented the custom search filter for date range. So we added start and end date filter. Alright. We have explored the traditional methods thoroughly in which we used jQuery, and also we wrote the custom functionality in the client side for handling the data table functionalities. But today we are taking it to the next level and we will be implementing using Vite. So the Vite is a modern, fast and lightweight build tool and development server designed to improve the development experience for web projects. And it focuses on providing an efficient and seamless workflow, particularly for modern JavaScript frameworks and libraries like Vue.js, React, and also Laravel. With the power of Vite, we will embrace a faster and more efficient build tool that optimizes our assets for modern development. Therefore, forget the old ways of relying on CDNs or cluttered inline controller logic. In this tutorial, I will show you how to set up a clean modular workflow and aligns perfectly with Laravel's latest features. Therefore, by the end of this video, you will not only have a fully functional data table, but also a deeper understanding of how to harness Vite for lightning fast asset bundling. But before getting started, let's know why this approach is needed, or why should you care about this modern approach. Answer is very simple. Let me break it down for you. First, no more dependence on CDNs. If I will show you the previous project architecture, and if I will come to the project folder, inside the resources, views, we created this users.blade.php. Inside this, we included the lots of CDNs like CSS and for JS. Also we included jQuery CDN, Bootstrap.js and DataTable.js. Furthermore, we wrote the custom script to handle the server-side data table rendering. So in the modern approach, there won't be more dependence on CDNs. While CDNs are quick to set up, they make your app reliant on external resources. But with Vite, you bundle everything locally and resulting in faster load times and complete controls over your assets. The next benefit of using Vite is that will provide a cleaner and a scalable code. So in this entire playlist, we will have a cleaner and more scalable code, whether it is a client side or server side. If we talk about the server side, inside the app HTTP controllers, we have the user controller. Here we added the data table logic to implement the server-side rendering. Inside this controller, we added the logic to implement the server-side rendering. So this approach is called inline controller logic, and this is good for small projects basically, but it becomes a nightmare as your app grows. But by using the Yajra DataTable classes, you can separate your server-side logic and you can make it reusable and easy to maintain. And finally, future-proofing your app. Laravel 11 is designed to work seamlessly with Vite, and adopting this workflow align with the framework's vision for modern development. So this is a faster, cleaner, and it is built to last. So this is not just about doing things differently, it is about doing them in better way. So if you are ready to level up your Laravel game, stick with me and let's dive into the code and see in action. So Laravel asset bundling supports Vite. So if I will come to the browser, inside the official documentation of Laravel asset bundling, here we can see we have asset bundling with Vite. If I will scroll down, Here we have the introduction. Furthermore, we have the installation setup. Here we have the configuration. Okay. So this will bundle the assets like CSS, JS and images together, and that will make more faster loading time. Alright. So we are going to implement this for the data table, and for the data table we are going to use Yajra box. Here we have the Yajra box official documentation. Inside this, let's check out this Laravel data tables. Here we have the tutorials. Under this we have the quick starter. Inside this quick starter, we have the Laravel installer. So firstly, we will have to create a new Laravel project. If you have already a fresh project, you can go with that. But as of now, I'm going to create a new Laravel project so that we can see the differences between the previous implementation and the current implementation using Vite. Alright. So I will be creating a fresh Laravel application. So I will come to the terminal. Here I will create a new project using Laravel installer. So I will type Laravel new, and here I will provide the project name. So I will give the project name as Laravel Yajra box. Let's hit enter. This asked, would you like any starter kit? I will go with no as of now. For the testing framework, I will go with the test. I don't want to initialize the Git repository. So this is creating the project. Let's wait for a couple of seconds. And it is asking which database we want to prefer. I will select SQLite as of now. And I will run the default migration. Now this is installing test. And yes, the installation has been completed. Now I will cd into the project folder. So I will write Laravel Yajra box. I will open this in the VS Code editor. I will come to the terminal. Here I will type wallet park. Let's hit enter. Yes, the current project folder has been set for the wallet's path. I will come to the browser. Now I will access the project directly using the project folder. So I have given the application name as Laravel Yajra box. Then we can add .test. Let's hit enter. Yes, our application has started. Now we'll come to the documentation again. After installing the Laravel, we will install Laravel UI auth package. Let's copy this command, come to the terminal. Let's hit enter. This is installing Laravel UI. Next, we will install Bootstrap auth. So let's copy this command. Let's paste it. This is asking the controller file already exists. Would you want to replace? I will select yes. Now this is asking please run npm install. But I will come to the documentation. Now in the next step, I will install Yajra Laravel DataTables. So I will copy this command. I will paste it. Yes, the Laravel Yajra DataTable has been installed here. Next, I will install Laravel DataTables Vite. This will connect Vite for Laravel application. I will copy this command. I will paste it. Here this is installing Vite for Laravel. Let's wait for a moment. Yes, the installation has been completed. Now let's check out the documentation. After installing this has added Bootstrap icons, data table with buttons and select, and also this has added Laravel data table custom scripts. Okay, if we'll come to the project folder, here we have the node modules. Inside this, if we'll scroll down, here we have the Bootstrap. Thereafter, we have the datatables.net. Okay, and all the other dependencies related to data tables have been installed here. Also related to Bootstrap icons, here we have the Bootstrap icons. This is fine. Let's collapse this. Inside the root of the project folder, we can see Laravel Vite has added vite.config.js. If we'll open this, Here we have the configuration for the assets like CSS and JS. So this will bundle the assets like CSS and JS of the project. So currently this is referring to resources folder. Inside this resources, we have the SAS folder. Here we have the app.scss. And by default, Laravel has imported fonts, variables, and bootstrap SCSS. Alright. Now in order to use data tables, we will have to import the data tables as well. So inside the resources app.js, we will have to import Laravel Vite. So let's copy these two lines. Let's come to the VS Code editor again. Inside the resources JS, we have the app.js. Currently, by default, Bootstrap has been imported here. Now here, I will add Laravel data table Vite. I will remove this Bootstrap. This is fine. Now next, we have to import the SCSS. So by default, in the app.scss, we already have these three lines. We will have to import data tables only. So let's copy these all CSS. Let's come to the code editor. Inside the app.scss, after this bootstrap, let's add these lines. Okay. If we try to locate the path by clicking on control click, yes, we are able to navigate to the file. So this is fine. Now let's come to the browser again. Now we will have to bundle the assets using npm command. So we will have to run npm run dev. So let's type npm run dev. Let's hit enter. And this is bundling all the assets together. Now let's come to the browser. Let's refresh our application. Yes, here we have the login and register option added by Laravel UI and Bootstrap auth. Okay. Now we'll follow the documentation for data table implementation. So in the next step, we will create a data table class. So when we installed Laravel Yajra DataTables package in our project, it has added some custom command to create a data table class. If I will come to the terminal, let me duplicate this terminal here. So I'm on the same project folder. Now I will type php artisan command. And if I will scroll up, here we have few new commands added by data tables. So these all commands have been provided by Yajra DataTables. So firstly, we will talk about this data tables :make command. So this data tables :make command will create a new data table class. So this will help for creating data table instance, and we won't have to define or write any custom logic for handling server side data table. So this is the new approach for using data tables in server side using Yajra box. So we won't have to define all the logic in the controller. Instead, Yajra DataTable provides a separate class, and in that class, we can configure everything related to columns and data. So let's create a new data table class here. So I will clear the console first. So I will type php artisan data tables :make command. Thereafter, we will have to provide the class name that we want to create for the data table. So as of now, I want to create a class for users. So I will add users class. Let's hit enter. This has created a new folder inside app as data tables, and inside that it has created a class as users datatable.php. Let's navigate to that app data tables. Here we have the users datatable.php. So I will come to this class later and I will explain you each and everything here. But before that, let's come to the documentation. And here in the next step, we will have to create a controller so that we can render a view, and inside that view, we can render the data table. So let's create a controller first. So I will create a controller as user controller. Let's hit enter. Yes, the user controller has been created. Now inside the user controller, we will have to create a function to render the data table. So I will come to the user controller. Here I will create a function as index. Now inside this index function parameter, we will have to include the users data table class that we have created for data table rendering. So we can write users data table, and this has imported here. I will create one instance, let's suppose data table. Okay. Now in the next step, we will have to return our view using this data table. So I will write return $data table, and we will write render function here. Inside this render function, we will have to provide a view name on that we want to render the user data table. So I will create a blade file as index. So I will come to the resources, views. I will create one blade file as index.blade.php. This is fine. Inside this index blade, I will extend the layouts app blade. So this app blade has been generated using Laravel UI auth, and here all the assets like CSS and JS have been bundled using Vite. So I will extend this blade inside index blade. Alright. So I will write extends directive, and here I will provide the path as layouts.app. Now next we will have to append some data. So inside app blade, we already have yield content here. So here after the menu, we have the yield directive to append the content. So I will append the content here. I will use section content and end section. Now I will come to the documentation again, and here we created this blade file. We extended the layouts, and inside the section directive, we will have to render the data table. So what I will do, I will copy this div class container, and here I will paste it. So we have the div class container. Thereafter we have a card component, and we have the card header, and we have the card body. Inside the card body, we have the data table, and we have called the table function. Okay. Now in the next step, we will have to add the data table scripts. So here Yajra DataTables provide data table script. So we will have to push it in the app blade. So I will copy this script, and I will add it after this section. So after adding the scripts here, we will have to push it in the app.blade so that it will be loaded in the application. So in order to push this script in the app.blade, we will have to use the stack directive here. So before closing of this body tag, I will use stack scripts. Okay, this is fine. Now this index script will loaded inside this app.blade. Now in the next step, we will have to create a route so that we can execute this controller index function. So I will come to the web.php. Inside this, we have the auth routes added by UI auth. I will create one more route as route : get. Inside this, I will add endpoint name as users, and I will call the user controller. So I will add user controller : class, and I will execute the index function. Also I will add name route as users. This is fine. Now the route setup has been done here. Now we can access the index blade in the browser. So let's come to the browser. Let's try to navigate to the users route. And here we can see it thrown data tables warning. Let's click on OK. And this is exactly same as we see in the data tables. But currently we have not initialized data table instance as we do in normal jQuery data table. So how this is working? So this is the magic of using Laravel Yajra box. We don't have to initialize the data table in the client side. Everything will work with the server side only. So now we will see how this is working. So I will come to the code editor. And we already created a data table class as users data table. Inside this, if I will scroll down, here we have the data table function. Inside this class, firstly we have the user model imported. So while creating this data table class, we passed the class name as users. So based on that, this understood, we are going to create the data table for the user. So it automatically imported that user model. Furthermore, we have the data table classes as builder, button and others. And this users data table has extended the data table class. Next, we have the data table function. Inside this is accepting query builder, and this query builder is basically a model instance, and this is coming from here. This is the user model instance. Inside this is returning model query. Now next we have the HTML function. So this HTML function is basically a HTML builder that is creating the entire HTML layout for this table. Here this entire HTML has been created using this HTML builder. So firstly we can see we have this builder function, and in the very first we have this set table ID function. So this table ID will set the ID inside the HTML table. If I will show you by inspecting this table, inside this card body we have the users table wrapper. Here we have the table, and we can see we have the users dash table. So we can customize this ID dynamically from here. If I will set users table dash data table, and if I will refresh this, here we can see this ID has been changed as users table data table. So from here we can manage everything dynamically using the server side without touching the client side. And based on this given ID, everything has been updated here, just like its wrapper, its filter. Okay. So as of now, I will keep this ID as users dash table. Now next we have the get columns function. So this get columns function has been specified here in the same class, and from here all the data table columns have been mapped whatever we are seeing here in the front end. So in the first column we can see we have the action column rendered, and that is defined here. This is computed, and this computed means this is a raw column. All right. And for this computed column there won't be any sorting or searching kind of thing. So this is similar to raw column as we see in the data table. Next we have the ID column, and here we have to specify further columns that we want to add for the users. So what I will do, I will make a sequence of the columns here. Firstly I will keep ID, then I will keep name and email. Okay. Now let's come to the browser. Let's refresh. Yes, here we can see we have the ID rendered in the first column. Next we have the name, email, created at, updated at, and the action. And if we'll check in the network tab, we have the Ajax call fired up, and here this is same as we saw in the data table. We have the data array, and here we have the queries. So based on every Ajax call, internally this is making one query, and that is applying on the users table. Now let's come to the code editor again, and if I'll scroll to our function, here after the columns we have the minified Ajax. So basically this minified Ajax is minifying the Ajax URL that is creating for the Ajax request. So if I will come to the browser, inside the headers, here we can see we have the request URL, and currently this is in the minified form. If I will remove that function, and if I will refresh, now if I will check the Ajax request again, in the request URL, now we can see the request URL length has been increased. Okay. So this minify Ajax function will minify this Ajax URL length. So let's keep it same. Now we have the DOM function, and by default this is commented. So inside this DOM function, by default we have the string as bfrtip. So here every string has a different meaning, just like B stands for buttons, and these buttons will have export buttons just like Excel, CSV, PDF, print, clear and reset. And here next we have the F stands for filter. Filter means we will have the search input in the front end. Okay, so by default this has enabled. Next we have the R represents the table processing. So when we search anything, this process this Ajax request. Next we have the T, and here T is table itself. Next we have I. So here I is the table information. That means the total number of records that we are seeing here in the info. So this is I. Lastly we have the P, and this is for pagination that we are seeing here. So by default this is commented here. I will enable this later. Next we have order by functionality. So inside this order by, this is accepting the integer value, and here this integer value is basically column index. So inside this table we have the column indexing as 0, 0 for ID, 1 for name, and further in the incrementing order. So by default in the order by, this has added the 1, and 1 is specifying the name column. So by default this has sorted using the name column. If I will change this to 0, this will sort using the ID column, and by default this will sort in the descending itself. Let's refresh. Yes, we can see now the sorting is added based on the ID, and it is in descending order. Next we have the selected style single. So based on this will apply the style of the data table. Furthermore, we have the buttons array, and inside this buttons array we have few buttons as Excel, CSV, PDF, print, reset and reload. Alright, so currently these all buttons are not visible because this DOM property has commented. So I will come to this part later in the next video. Alright, currently let's work on the add column and modify column. So we already saw these all functionality in our previous data table series. So if I will come to the official documentation of data table, inside this we have this section as column editing. Inside this we can add a column. So we can add columns here by using this add column function, and we will have to add it here in this eloquent data table function. Okay, currently we can see we have the action column added, and inside this we have the text as users.action. If I will comment this and if I will refresh, here we can see we don't have the data related with action column. We can hide this action column from here. Let's comment this. If we refresh, yeah, we have the same data table rendered. So by using the add column function, we can add columns in the data table. Similarly, we can modify the column using edit column function. So now let's suppose if I want to modify the date format again. Alright, so we'll be using the modify column function. Here we have the edit column. We can update the column name here. So what I will do, I will use edit column function. Inside this I will add the column name as created at, and here we have to modify the date columns for every column. So I will write function, and inside this function I will capture a parameter as user because we have to update the user data. So I will return updated date here, and for converting the date format I will be using carbon, and then I will call this parse function. Inside this parse function I will pass user created at date, and I will call this format function. Inside this I will pass the format as dmy. This is fine. Let's come to the browser. Let's refresh. Yeah, for the created at date the date format has been changed. Similarly, we will be adding for updated at date. So I will come to the code editor, and here I will copy the same function and I will change this to updated at. This is fine. Okay. Now I will add some buttons here in the action so that we will see how we can render raw HTML. Okay. So I will create some buttons here. So inside this action, I will add function and I will return HTML here. Inside this return, I will write, let's suppose, hyperlink, just like this, and I will pass a class as btn, btn primary, btn sm. Okay, and here we have already imported the bootstrap icons, so we can use bootstrap icons here. So I will write I class bi, and this stands for bootstrap icons, bi dash pencil. This will generate the edit icon. If I will refresh, yes, here we can see we have the edit icon generated by bootstrap icons. Same thing, we can render the delete button here. I will copy and paste this. I will add class as btn danger, and this will be trash. Let's refresh. Yeah, we have the buttons generated here. Now here the action buttons are overlapping to each other due to the less width of this column. So we can set the width of every columns here in the server side itself. So if I will come to the code editor again, here inside this get columns function, we have the width function here. So let's increase this width of the action column as 100, and let's refresh the application. Yes, we can see the width has been increased for this column. Alright, and there you have it, a fully functional server-side data table in Laravel 11, and this is powered by Vite and Yajra. This approach not only modernizes your workflow but also makes your app faster, cleaner, and more scalable. Let's quickly recap what we have covered in today's session. We set up Laravel 11, then we installed Yajra DataTables and Vite. Also, we configured assets for local bundling and created a data table class for modular server-side logic. Finally, we built and deployed a powerful data table UI with search, sort, and pagination. So if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more Laravel tutorials, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any update from Programming Fields. Also, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And if you are curious about how this approach compares to the older CDN based method, check out my previous video for a detailed comparison. In the next video, we will dive deeper in this Laravel Yajra box with Vite, and we will see the action buttons, like how we can work on the action buttons like export to Excel, CSV, PDF, and print things. Also, we will enable the column filters using the server side itself without touching the client side. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, keep building smarter, faster, and better Laravel application.